The world economy grew by a healthy 4% in 2004, the strongest annual growth for more than a decade. That certainly was a good thing for business and global trade, but not without implications. The increased pressure on all forms of transportation has lit a slow fuse under the foundations of the entire industry.
No matter where you look, Europe, Asia, the United States, the goal is always better growth to create more jobs, but there are implications.
Growing wealth and global trade means the world's roads are getting busier and busier. And without the right investment into infrastructure, that means more congestion and more pollution.
The 21st century debate on this subject is build more roads or use technology to make the existing network more efficient. In the US, the lack of flow on the roads is a challenging issue.
There are 168 what we call hotspots on American highways. They are congestion points. If we could spend a significant amount of money that it takes to get rid of those hotspots, we'd get rid of about 75% of the mobile source pollution in the United States.
The US Congress listened to this concern, passing a record $286 billion highway bill, which earmarks a controversial number of projects that runs into the thousands. As well as building new transport links, the idea is to make the existing infrastructure work better by making it intelligent. This means installing communication and monitoring technology to manage and regulate the flow of traffic, as well as a range of tolls and congestion charging. Cross the Atlantic and you see the same problems being debated.
We are trying to harmonize in Europe to have, if not the same standards, at least interoperable roads that we can understand each other's. It's not so easy because we are speaking different languages.
But of course, all this costs money. And as the EU expands to take in more developing nations, the issue becomes more critical. The EU White Paper on Transport suggests that up to €350 billion needs to be spent by 2010.
There are some 30 very, very big projects, infrastructure projects, trans-border projects defined in Europe that have to be built according to, for example, the European Commission over the next 20 years. We don't believe that these projects make sense and that you can make more sensible solutions.
Despite the concerns of Ding's environmental group, these projects have the backing of the European Commission and industry. But there is concern about how they will be paid for. The Commission itself acknowledged in a 2003 revision to the paper that the financing of these projects is vastly under-budgeted. So far, only a quarter of the spending required to complete 14 priority projects identified a decade ago has been met. And of those 14 projects, only 3 have been completed.
How can you finance it? And the financing means not only the question of the infrastructure, but also everything concerning this new technology, even inside the vehicles.
This comes at a time when the squeeze on budgets means spending on infrastructure has fallen by 0.5% to just 1% of GDP for most member states. At this time, all solutions to ease pressure on the roads are being considered.
We are promoting the idea of increased vehicle lengths, even to 25.25 meters and 60 tons. And if you use those types of combinations, you can actually go from 3 vehicles to 2, which obviously reduces emissions and congestions in roads.
Among the more radical ideas on the table is a rethink of the way road users are taxed, from a one-off annual amount to a fee based on distance travelled, and taking into account all the costs of transport, including environmental impact. A system like this would be very difficult to administer. The transport industry understands the need for revisions, but want the taxes applied to be put back into road infrastructure.
We have now an increase of the fuel prices. We pay more VAT and more excises on the higher price, and we have no reinvestment in, or too less reinvestment in infrastructure.
With all of these solutions, pretty much everyone has agreed that governments need to spend more money on supporting road transport infrastructure. But due to the timescales involved for projects of this nature, it's a subject that seems to be off the radar for many politicians.
Transport is a matter which can be dealt with tomorrow. 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line doesn't necessarily win votes for next week's election. but it should do. We are being blinkered, we are being blind, we are ignoring the enormous cost which we're storing up for ourselves.
The present buzz in Europe is all about creating jobs. But the realisation now is that the potential for growth will be smothered if the infrastructure cannot keep the pace.